Hi everyone, how's everyone doing today? It's great to meet you all. My name is Celina Lee. I'm a lawyer, an author, and also a talk show host from New York City. I recently wrote a book, as Matt said, called 꿈을 이뤄드립니다, and I'll briefly talk about that a bit later. I want to share with you today about my experience of becoming bilingual and bicultural and how it has shaped and changed my life and what I've learned from the experiences. So let me first briefly introduce about my background. I was born in California, and when I was 3 years old, my family moved back to Korea. I went to a local elementary school there and then moved back to California. So in Korea, life was good. I was a good student, got good grades, got elected to class president, and had nice bursts of friends, so it was good back then. And then everything changed when I moved back. All of a sudden, I was an outsider. I was a nobody. Nobody wanted to be friends with me. And as I'm sure you know, middle school is a very difficult time for everyone, but especially for someone who did not know the language or the culture, it was an incredibly difficult time, and the kids made sure that I knew that I was different. So I really struggled with this idea, and then the classes that I dreaded the most were classes that required any kind of socializing, like PE class. So I gladly would have taken 5 math classes instead of 1 PE class. That's how bad that was. No, I'm like, seriously. So I just thought to myself, you know, I think I'm different because maybe I don't speak English as well as these people. So as soon as I leave this ESL class, which I felt like very much a second-class citizen being in it, and then be enrolled in a regular English class, all of a sudden I'm going to be just like the rest of the American kids, right? So I studied really, really hard. I left ESL in 2 months. I know, record, right? I studied some more during the summer, and by fall term I was enrolled in a regular English class, and it would all happen within less than 5 months me moving to the United States, which was pretty good, right? So I thought, hey, I did it. I am finally like the rest of the kids now. They're all going to be my friends, and no, that did not happen. So my face did not turn like whiter. I did not become blonde, or I did not get blue eyes. I still had the same yellow face and the black hair, and I was still Korean, and I was still very different from the majority. And at the time, my family lived in a nice neighborhood in California with a good school district. So I was set to go to a really good high school with a good reputation of sending kids to good colleges. So, you know, my parents were really happy about that. But then I told them, no, I'm not going to the same high school with these kids who used to make fun of me, because I want a brand new start where the people didn't know about my past. So they had to move to a new town where the town did not have such a good high school with great reputation. So some of our family friends, of course, were worried that, like, ooh, I think Celina might be ruining her chance of going to good college because I don't know about that high school. Like, you know, people change their address to go to, you know, the high school where you had originally come from. That's how bad that was. So, but I was like, you know what? I don't care if I don't go to college. I'm not going to high school with those kids. I'm going to have a brand new start. So we moved. And I remember through this experience, like my parents, you know, while I was trying to learn English and trying to adjust to this new American society, they kept telling me, you have to keep up with your Korean. You have to keep up with your Korean. You have to keep reading Korean books and keep reading newspapers. And they had me go back to Korea often, so I would keep up with my Korean cultural ties. And this was actually quite different from what a lot of the other Korean American parents were doing at the time, because most of the Korean parents at the time believed that in order to really succeed in the American society, you have to not speak Korean, you have to give up being Korean culturally, and you have to be assimilated into the American society, and that was the only way to succeed here. And they had reasons to believe this because a lot of the earlier studies on bilingualism concluded that speaking 2 different languages actually hinders and has a negative impact on a child's development. So they had reasons to believe that, but my parents did not think that way. So as frustrating as it was and as difficult it was, I kept up with my Korean, and it actually turned out to be one of my greatest assets and greatest blessings in life. Speaking a language is not only about learning a method of communication. you also learn about the values and then the cultures of the place where that language is spoken. So because I kept up with my Korean, I was instilled in the Korean values as well as the American values. So when I grew up, I didn't have to struggle with the identity issues that I have seen some of my Korean American friends go through. And because I learned about two completely different languages and two completely different cultures, it actually got me very excited about learning about a third culture. So I constantly moved to different parts of the world where I didn't know anyone before, and I really enjoyed reestablishing myself from the scratch. And of course, I've extensively traveled to many different parts of the world as well. And I really believe that throwing yourself into a completely new situation in an unfamiliar environment is probably one of the best ways to not only learn about the culture there, but also to learn about yourself, because you're gonna discover things that you absolutely had no idea about yourself. And I really believe that my bilingual, bicultural background really prepared me well for these experiences, and also really taught me how to adapt well into new situations and different environments. Also, language determines the way a person thinks. So if you know how to speak two very different languages, that means you know how to think in two different ways. And if there are two different ways to think, there's gotta be more than two ways, right? So there's gotta be third way and fourth way. So my experience of learning another language taught me that there are many different ways to think. So one way to think may not necessarily always be right, and how I think may not always necessarily be right. So I learned to really appreciate different points of view and differences, and I really started to embrace differences in the diversity that exists in our today's society. So some of you might be wondering what my book is all about, so let me briefly tell you about that. So the title of the book is called 꿈을 이뤄드립니다. And it's always been my childhood dream to publish a book. I just wanted to have a book with my name on it ever since I was a little girl. And you know, I used to write like a little novel with pictures, and then I would show it to my mom. My mom didn't think it was really funny, so I kind of stopped on that my dream. And when I grew up, my professions in law and finance, I was an investment banker before I became a lawyer, really had nothing to do with publishing a book. So, but through work, and also while I was hosting a talk show for Korean American Broadcasting Television in New York City, I met a lot of successful people who have achieved their dreams in many different industries. But the people who have inspired me the most were people who were using their skills and their talents to help other people and to contribute to the society. So then I started to think, what is it that I can do? Are there anything that I can do a little better than other people? And I had to think really long and hard about this because I just didn't know what I was good at. I just didn't think I had any distinct talent. So I actually struggled with this idea for a very, very long time. And I tend to go to sleep really late. And last year, springtime, one night I just couldn't go to sleep, and it was about 4 a.m. And just all of a sudden I had this idea for a book, like something like hit my head, and I was like super excited. So the idea was I would interview successful Korean Americans who have achieved their dreams in different industries, and I would write the book in Korean for the Korean-speaking readers in Korea and also in the US. Because most of the Korean Americans who are successful that I would interview didn't speak or write Korean well, then I'd be using my bilingual skills to sort of serve as a bridge and bring those stories to the Korean-speaking readers, right? So then I would be doing something good using what I can, the skills that I had. And if you remember, when I was younger, the fact that I spoke Korean meant that I was different. And this has given me incredible amount of pain. And this was not something that I was necessarily proud of. And in fact, I realized that it actually made me be very unique. Being different actually was a good thing and turned out to be one of my greatest assets. I'll tell you briefly about who's in the book, because a lot of people ask me that. The first person that I write about is Washington State Senator Paul Shin. Also, Professor Dennis Hong from Virginia Tech. He is the first TED speaker that's Korean. I'm sure some of you may have known him. Also, a very famous robo-scientist and has created a car where an independent person can make, a blind person can independently make decisions and drive. Chi Won-yoon, who is the chairman of a UBS Bank Asia Pacific region, considered as one of the most successful Korean in finance. Chef Hooni Kim, who quit med school to become a chef. He became the first chef of a Korean restaurant to be awarded a Michelin star, which is a very, very prestigious award. Victor Cha is a Georgetown professor, also worked at the White House during Bush administration. Won-soo Kim, who's an award-winning artist. Alex Jung, who overcame disability to become a New York City criminal court judge. Margaret Lee, a real estate developer from New York City. And last but not least, Howard Koh, who's Assistant Secretary for Health. So publishing this book probably is one of the most difficult and challenging experiences I've ever had in my life. Pretty up there with my transition to the American society. And it was especially difficult for 3 reasons. Well, number one, I said I'm going to write about successful people, right? So that means that they are very, very busy. And why would they want to meet with me? And how would I even get in touch with them? And here I'm telling them, well, I'm a first-time author. I've never written a book. I only went to elementary school in Korea, but I'm going to write the book in Korean. And I want you to tell me everything about about your life, all the intimate details, including all the failures you have. And I'm going to expose it to the world. So meet with me, and who would do that, right? So, and they really didn't have much to benefit from agreeing to be in this book. So the story as to how I convinced each and one of them to join in my vision is far too long of a story for me to share with you here. I'll hope to do that next when I get a chance. But I can assure you that I've never been more rejected in my life before, much more than when I was in middle school. And if I had given up after hearing the first no, this book would never have been published. So another challenge was, of course, how would I find a publisher in Korea when I know nothing about the publishing market in Korea? I have no connections there. So a lot of people told me it's going to be incredibly difficult, so I better not waste my time. And as cliche as it sounds, I really learned from this experience that where there's a will, there's a way, because if there's something that you really, really want to do, you're going to figure out a way to make that work. You're going to try one way, and if that does not work, you're going to think of something else, think of something else, think of something else until you make that work. And this is why we all should be doing what we really love to do. Another challenge, of course, was, yes, I spoke Korean well, but how would I be able to write a publishable quality writing in Korean with only 6 years of elementary school education in Korea? And a lot of people doubted that too, including my own mother. But I think the fact that I kept up with my Korean by keep reading Korean books and newspapers, it was crucial in helping me to write this book. And for me, the question was never, was I going to be able to finish? Because a lot of people ask me, because some of my friends who know from this experience, I kind of disappeared for a year when I was publishing this book. Matt knows this, actually. Did you ever want to quit? And I said, you know what? Actually, no. I never thought about, can I finish it? But I always thought about, how can I finish this? So there are many stories that I can share with you on what I've learned from each and one of these people. But today I want to share with you 2 stories, one with Senator Paul Shin and with Howard Koh. Some of you may have heard of, I'm sure, Senator Shin's story. He has an incredible journey from Korea to the US. He became an orphan at about 3 or 4 years old and was literally begging for money and food on the street. And when he was 16 years old, he started working at the US Army base because it was during the Korean War. And when he was 18, he got adopted by an American GI and moved to the United States. Up until then, though, he had never gone to school, so no schools would take him. So he got his GED, went to college, got his PhD, and became a professor. But then he faced so much racial discrimination in this country, so he decided to enter into politics. And he told me that when he was in Korea, he faced so much people discrimination because he was an orphan, he had no family, he had no education, he had no connections. So people treated him like he was nothing. So he left the country thinking that, you know what, I'm never going to come back here, and I'm going to have this like brand new life in this land of opportunity, which was America. And when he came, he faced so much racial discrimination. So one night he like asked God, like, God, why are you doing this to me? Like, who am I? What am I here in this earth for? So he really struggled with this idea of who he was and his identity. And he thought, if in order to really know my roots, I gotta learn Korean. Of course, he lived in Korea up until he was about 18, but he was a street boy before begging for food and money on the street, so he never really learned to speak Korean properly. So he found this one professor at University of Washington and went and begged him that, please teach me Korean. So from then on, about 3 years, he really immersed himself into studying Korean properly, and he told me that how that experience had taught him to be really proud of the fact that he was Korean and to really find who he was. Oh, there's a picture of me there. I would also like to tell you about Howard Koh, who's the Assistant Secretary for Health. I'm sure some of you may have heard of his family. It's the really famous Koh family. His brother is Harold Koh, who was a former Yale Law School dean, now works as a legal advisor for the Obama administration. There are 6 siblings in the Koh family, and all 6 of them have gone to Harvard, Yale, and MIT. And all of them have achieved tremendous success in all different kinds of professions. So I thought this was a little too much, so I went to go interview the mother and asked her what was so special about her parenting style. So I wrote that up as part of Howard's profile. So, oh, there's a really famous mother. I'm actually going to see her next Tuesday to give her the book. So Howard told me that when he grew up in the 1950s in Massachusetts and in Connecticut. And back then, it's pretty much no Asians around, and it's really, really hard to see any Koreans. So people didn't know much about Korea other than the fact that it was a place where there was a war. So the knowledge was low, and the understanding was very poor. And the only other Asian kids in elementary school were his brothers. So, of course, as a kid, you want to feel like you're like the rest of the kids. But the kids would go out of their way to tell him that he was not. So growing up as a minority was incredibly difficult for him. But then he told me that, you know, when you're young, you want to be like the majority, you want to fit in, right? But now that when he's older, he said it's one of the beauties of growing older, but now he knows that being different from the majority is actually a wonderful thing. It's a huge positive, and he absolutely loves it. And this is why. He said, well, number one, you look very different from everybody else, so people will never forget you. It's a huge, huge positive. And you can also tell your own stories of how your experience of how it's like to live outside the mainstream and your sensitivity to the issues of the underserved and the underdog. And it's an incredibly powerful message in any industry that you work in. And he said, I love being Korean because in whatever you do, you can be the first. And when I heard that, I was like, oh, I think I finally started to understand why Howard and his siblings were very successful, because we often say that as a minority, it's really hard to succeed in this society, right? Because we say that, oh, I want to, work in this profession, but there's no one that looks like us, so that must mean there are no opportunities for us, so we give up before we even try. But then he thought, hey, if there's no one that looked like us in that profession, even better, because I get to be the first, right? So they changed their thoughts, and as they changed their thoughts, their attitudes changed, their behavior changed, and the results changed. So although it was really hard at the time, they all believed in the seemingly impossible dream, and many years later, as you know, all of their impossible dreams came true. So today I shared with you my experiences on how becoming bilingual, bicultural has shaped and changed my life, and how what I once thought was a disadvantage, a weakness that I had, the fact that I spoke Korean, which made me be very different from the majority, which I actually did not like at the time, made me be very unique and turned out to be one of my greatest assets. And also it helped me to achieve my dream, which was to publish a book, and also to use my skill to do something to help people and then do something good for the society. So I hope after hearing my talk that you will go out and celebrate the fact that you're different from the majority, because it's a huge positive, it's a great thing. And I hope so. I also hope that you'll take some time to think about what it is that you can do using some of your skills and talents to help other people and contribute to the society. And you might just be very surprised to find out that what you think may be your weakness or disadvantage might just turn out to be one of your greatest strengths and blessings in your life. So thank you.
Let's give it up for Celina again. You live a new life for every new language you speak.